I sold like $30,000 worth of work for a 14-year-old. Like when the Great Recession happened, I lost 9 competitors. I had to bring the equipment to the bank, and all of a sudden, he's out of business. He goes, "You should buy it." I go, "That'd be great, but we just had a fire, built this." I go, "I have no money at all."
Got a good one for you today. It's Dan Erickson, founder, president, co-owner of Erickson Asphalt and Concrete. He's been in business for over 30 years. Each year has been a record year. The man knows what he's doing, but it hasn't come without his challenges. There's been moments where he's been on the brink of losing it all. He's the type of guy that has learned and refined, and when he falls down, he gets back up. You know what to do. Give me a little dopamine, hit that like button, subscribe. Let's get to the episode.
My first real entrepreneurial business, I remember buying like a pack of Now and Laters and splitting it up and selling them for like 25 cents a piece at school. And then one time, then I found that if you took like a box of toothpicks and soaked them in cinnamon, in a bag, then kids would buy those for like 10 or 15 cents a piece. So I don't know. I guess I wouldn't really count that. But when I was 14 years old, my dad and uncles, their paving business didn't offer any maintenance service, no seal coat or services or anything like that. And they said, "Well, I had 2 cousins that were similar age, one older, one younger. But so which were my uncle's kids, my dad's partner. So with my 2 cousins and my older brother and I, they talked us into starting seal coating driveways for their customers. So we started our own business that summer. My aunt came up with the name. She said we should call it Country Cousins Seal Coating. So
I like that.
So we did it one summer. Almost all the work we got through just referrals from my dad's business. And the next summer came along and no one else wanted to do it. It was too hard to work, too hot, too dirty, except for me. So I found a class down in St. Louis, Missouri through Sealmaster, put on a class and like a show, so it was a 2-day event down in St. Louis, Missouri. I took my mom into driving me down there, and I took a lot of notes and learned a lot.
How old were you at this time?
I was 14.
Wow.
Still, it was still which I hadn't turned 15 yet. So, but I was always interested in business because my dad was an entrepreneur. My grandfather with his welding repair business. I think it was, just everybody in the family. It was either family farm or the blacksmith business or whatever. But so you're around it, and I don't know. I always thought I could do things better than my dad, So
what'd you do with the money? Was that a big motivation? Was that pretty cool having money as a 14?
I wouldn't say the motivation was money, at that time, because I really, what do you need when you're 14? You can't buy a car or anything, but it was more or less just the challenge of it, of being able to, I don't know, just try that. I started listening to, I don't know if you've ever heard of this, and maybe you can look this up later, but Bruce Williams, he's probably long gone by now, but he did a radio show on business. And so when I was I remember listening to him when I was like 9 or 10 years old on the radio at night about business ideas. So I always knew that I always had an interest in that. It caught my attention, and, I don't know, it was maybe weird to listen to that kind of stuff at 9 or 10, but, just remember some of the stories that he told still, like how he wanted to start a daycare business with his wife, but they didn't have any money. And so they talked a furniture store into like loaning them furniture, because he didn't have any money to like furnish, to equip this daycare. And then eventually they ended up, being successful, and they bought all their furniture from this place. And when I started the paving business, Erickson Asphalt, in 1990, we didn't have enough money to buy a asphalt roller. So I remembered that story. I went to, there was a dealership here around Long Lake, and I asked them if I could demo a roller. And so every time we would sell a job, we would demo a roller. So I couldn't afford one. So
wow.
So yeah, I don't know. I just was always interested in the business entrepreneurship. So
That's interesting. The young, impressionable mind, 9, 10 years old, that sticks with you. The lessons you learn there. I'm having a kid actually in a couple months here, so now my mind is on parenthood and how I raise a child. And I want to raise an entrepreneurial child if they want that. But have you thought, just as we're on this family tangent a little bit, did you try to lead your children in a similar way, or lead them to the water? Or I know you can't force somebody to be interested in something, but when you think about entrepreneurship and how it has kind of played such a role in your life, did you try to encourage that from a young age?
There, when you grow up in that kind of a family, you can't escape being exposed to it. So it's either, I think you either look at it as a positive or a negative. One of my sons says, I never want to have that kind of stress that I see you go through. And my daughter, she's just lights up when she thinks about starting her own business. And she's tried a few different, she's a software engineer. So she's tried a few different, like a Shopify store and things like that. So far hasn't hit the thing, but I feel like, I don't know, I've said this to people, like I don't think you can teach someone to be an entrepreneur. I think you're born that way, with that mindset or that gift, I would say. Just like, anybody can do it, just like anybody could probably learn how to play a piano, but are you going to want to sit at that piano even when you don't have to? Even when you should be doing something else, are you going to go sit at that piano? Those are gifted musicians. A gifted entrepreneur is someone who's going to be studying it, reading books, even when, they have a lot of other things they could choose to do. So I think it's more of a, God-given gift, and I think a gift is, I'm not Elon Musk, but
There's a spectrum.
but because if you're, if you're good at playing guitar, you might not be, Eddie Van Halen, but it's still a gift. And I think you need to follow that gift. You need to nurture that, and you need to use the gifts that you're given at whatever level talent that is. So I don't know, that's my theory. And so, I have 2 boys and a girl, and each one has a different talent, different gift.
Back to the business. At what point what was that inflection where it went from, this is a fun, like, I'm a 14, 15, 16-year-old making some money, learning the business, to where you started to take it really seriously and you're like, oh, actually, this is a viable career path that I could really pursue?
Well, after I went to that SEAL Master class and I took it, then, yeah. I mean,
It was game on.
Oh, yeah, because I had like a system now.
Hmm.
They gave me process procedures, and I didn't really think of it that much at that time, what it was, but they showed you how to, get work, how to estimate it, the type of equipment. And they were selling equipment and material. That was the reason that they put this on. But it basically showed you how to start a business, and how to operate it. So I ended up, with the help of my parents, I took out a $10,000 loan at 14 years old. They co-signed, obviously, bought a trailer and a pickup truck and blowers and all the equipment I needed to do it, and set up an account with SEAL Master for the materials, and had my mom drive me around neighborhoods, and I'd door knock for work. And
Wow.
that first year I sold like $30,000 worth of work, and was it 1981 or whatever it was? So, which was, a ridiculous amount of money for a 14-year-old at that. So
Paid off the loan.
yeah, I hired some friends who were old enough that had a driver's license to drive, because I didn't have a driver's license. So I had kids I grew up with, a couple of them working for me by the end of that summer. And even they actually, 2 of them ran the crew after I went back to school in the fall, because we still had work to do. But so my mom did the payroll. So I really didn't know much about payroll at the time, but I was making a lot of money, and I spent it just faster than I was making it too. And, my parents, they let me do that. And after the second summer going into the winter, I had like 4 cars I was into downhill skiing. I skied at Wild Mountain which was like 15 minutes away. So I had like 2 pairs of ski. I mean,
You're living the
everything,
good
but
life. Yeah.
paid for my friends. If they were with me, Dan was paying. And winter came and there was no money to make the payments on that equipment. So, and my parents didn't bail me out, which was like the best lesson I ever learned. So I had to bring the equipment to the bank, and all my friends knew I was in business. Like, that guy's got his own business, and then all of a sudden he's out of business. So it was a great humility lesson, at a great age to learn it. I'm glad I didn't have to learn it at 30 when I was going to lose a house and, cars and everything else. So that was a big turning point, I think, or I don't know about turning point, but just a great lesson.
Yeah.
Also right around that time, just shortly after the recession of the 80s hit, where interest rates skyrocketed and everything. And I watched my dad's business fail too, and watched him go through that and just all the suffering from that. So that was another lesson that's the one that actually helped me. Between those two, that's what helped me get our business through the Great Recession, which was way worse than the recession that my dad's business went through. My dad never did go back into business. He, went and worked for some of the larger corporations around here. But it's tough to get, once you get knocked down like that, it takes some fortitude to actually try it again, So
Yeah. What was that self-talk, or how did you get back on the horse after returning the equipment to the bank?
Well, it took a few years. It was probably 4 or 5 years. I think it was, really, I mean, to be honest, it was one of those things, life situations where kind of everything came together. I mean, all these different things happened that just where everything aligned, not necessarily in a positive way when you were in that situation. So I got married young, got divorced almost right away. I had a job at the time. I got so sick about getting divorced that I basically lost my job, right? So I was basically unemployed. I was doing some painting work with my brother-in-law at the time, just for some cash or whatever, just trying to get by. I owned a house. I was trying to make house payments. I had a bunch of roommates and just barely getting by. And my older brother that I started the business with, had been to an auction like a year earlier and bought this like paver for $300. And he had a trucking business, so just an ITO with a dump truck, and just he was getting by, nothing major. But the paver was sitting at my dad's place, and my dad said, I either do something with this thing or get rid of it. And so we talked about it, and I'm like, well, yeah, let's give it a try, So I had nothing to lose. I mean, I was at the bottom, I was close to losing my house at the time, and then I really have a full-time employment. I'm like, well, what do we got to lose, So we really didn't have any money. We each put we had like $35 or something each to put in the bank to get a checking account started. And we got our first paving job, and we used my brother's dump truck, got that paver to work, which was like a drag box paver, which for anybody that, most people don't even know what that is nowadays. And then I demoed a roller, and yeah, just had nothing to lose. But I was, I did it for, I think it was 5 years. I was still kind of doing the painting, and then whenever we had that work, I was doing it. So kind of going back and forth between that. Then I actually ended up starting my own painting business meanwhile, because things just worked out that way, where I had an opportunity to have my own clients. So I did that until probably almost 10 years. I had both businesses going, and then the paving business just got so big, and the painting business was doing great too. I had to make a choice, so I chose the family, but to work with family. It's kind of really the deciding choice, and on that. So
more of a specific question, but do you remember any of those early sales pitches when you're knocking door to door, or how you would approach that?
I had just basically used the Sealmaster literature, which really it hasn't changed at all. It's just like, protect and your driveway and, make it last longer. You're going to gain twice the life. I had some graphs and different things like that. But I think, a 14-year-old kid knocking on your door, wanting to do some work, it was kind of a novelty. I don't remember hardly anybody saying no. So, yeah, I think that helped a lot,
Yeah.
So, and it's not that expensive of a service, where you had to think that long and hard about, it was probably back then it was, maybe, $180 to $100 for the average in-town driveway. So
You mentioned going with the seal coating asphalt business instead of painting, working with family. What have been the positives and then also the challenges of building a business with family?
Well, the positives are it's family that you're going to stick together through thick or thin, so I think you got a partner who cares about you. You're going to have Christmas and Thanksgiving and get-togethers, and you're going to see each other. So you got to, I think it just, I don't know. Because I've had different partners over the years in the painting business, and they're great. My painting business partner is a great partner, Mike Sandy, and he's just awesome guy. But I don't know, with family, it just hits different. It's like, I don't know. I always say it's like for the people who grew up around the farm, like the family farm. It's like you work together, you laugh together, you cry together. It's a way of life, kind of. It's a family business, and really, almost all businesses are family businesses if you think about it. Or at least started out that way. And it's just, when people say, oh, it's a family business, I'm like, well, just about especially construction. You get into construction, it's almost all family businesses. But so the positives are just being able to spend time with family all day, every day. The negative parts are the same exact thing. You're with family all day, every day. And sometimes it's hard to go to the family get-togethers and shut that off, and just stop talking about work, especially when it's the exciting stuff that's happening, or the other end of the spectrum when it's like the difficult or challenging things. It's hard to shut that off when you're not at work. So
Curious about how your approach has been to growth, because my understanding is each year you've basically had a record year for 30 plus years. And for that owner operator, the blue collar visionary, but he's an owner operator right now, maybe 26, and he wants to start hiring, he's thinking big. But I want to learn from you how you've thought about growth. Because there's like the stair step, there's people talk about hockey stick growth, there's all sorts of different things, and I want to know how you've approached it.
Well, let's see. When you're first starting out, I think the biggest thing, like I said, I was doing the painting and the paving. If looking back, I wish I would have just dove in head first as soon as I could, because once you put all of your attention into it, it really, pays off. You get the results. If you're just dabbling in it, like part-time or on the side, you think, God, how would it ever make enough money to support me and my family or whatever? But really, and once you dive into it, full time, it just seems to automatically take off. The other thing I've noticed too is every single business venture I've been in, which I've been in 8 different businesses over the years, year number 5 seems to be when it was kind of the year of viability, or when it's actually going to work. If it's not working by year 5, you better rethink your business plan. So yeah,
makes sense. What have you learned about hiring, and what's your approach? Because obviously growth and hiring are kind of tied.
What I've learned about hiring is nobody knows how to hire. It's so hard, like I'm on the planning commission for the city of Princeton. I'm also on the public utility commission. I'm the chair of that. And I've had to go through interviews with professionals. We hired the manager for the public utility, and we hired a guy who actually didn't interview very well, and he's just phenomenal. So it's like I've hired people that interviewed awesome, and they just do terrible on the job. And then I've hired people that interviewed horribly, and we ended up hiring them anyhow just because we needed to fill that position, and they just did awesome. So I don't know. I've heard a lot of different strategies, but I don't think I have a good answer for anybody. And I think most entrepreneurs, most business owners will probably say the same thing. It's like there's not a really great way to hire. I've heard, in fact, I was listening to a podcast here on the way here actually, and they were talking about hiring. And this lady who had a business for 37 years, her technique was to see how fast they walked in on the interview and their handshake, which, a lot of people use handshake to judge a lot of things, eye contact, firm handshake. But I hadn't heard the pace which you walk in to be, but she said that was like the number one thing that she had used that she found success with. So, I mean, if it has to come down to the pace they walk in at, does anybody really know how to hire the right person? So,
Right.
I don't know. I like to hire. I mean, everybody wants to hire experienced, but then when you do that, sometimes you got bad habits, so that you got to fix, or they know how. They don't want to conform to your process and procedures. So to start out with new, you got time into training. To start out with experience, you got time into retraining. So pick your poison. Advice is to I wouldn't hire probably not go so much at skill as attitude. Good attitude is hard you can't teach good attitude, but you can teach skill. So that's kind of our philosophy now. I'll let you know how it works out. Maybe that's kind of what we've been going with the last few years, is trying to hire attitude.
Was it nerve-wracking for you to let go of the reins as you hire? You doing less of the actual work, and then quality is probably the main concern. I would assume, at least for me, that would be the concern for my line of work, is the customer getting the quality that I know I could provide.
Yeah. Well, and they never will. The business owner's always going to do just that little bit more than your employee would, just because of the motivation factor of it. Who's going to have to deal with that customer complaint? I would say it wasn't. It's not so hard to let it go. It's hard to keep your nose out of it after you let it go, because you're always wanting to step in and correct and say, oh, I would have said this, I would have done this, I would have, there's always something you would have done different. And it's not always a better way. It's just the way you did it. So I think, one of our core values is to allow room for mistake and growth. And if you don't allow your people to make mistakes, they'll never figure out a better way. They'll never feel that pain. That I've learned everything from making mistakes. I've made all the mistakes. I want to make all the mistakes once and then move forward from there. So, and then once they make a mistake, then that's an opportunity to come in and say, hey, have you thought about doing it this way? Or this is what's worked for me. Or that's where you can come in and mentor and help. And because once they felt that pain, you got their attention.
You mentioned customer complaints, and in the home service industry, I mean, that's a real thing that needs to be navigated. What's been your philosophy on dealing with customer complaints?
Well, first, address it as fast as possible, because you don't want to let customers stew on it. And just take care of them. Do whatever, even if it's not your fault, take care of it. Our philosophy is like, if I can do anything to make it better, I'm going to do it. Even if even if I don't feel I should have or am obligated or contractually obligated. I mean, the contractual obligation that you have, I feel like is only when someone gets to be so unreasonable, there's nothing you can do. If we install a driveway for you and you say, I don't like it because of whatever it is, if I could pave that driveway and make it that way, I'm going to do it. If I can't, then I'm going to have to start educating on, maybe what the project, what the characteristics of asphalt are, what it can and can't do. But yeah, I think with customers, when they complain, even if it's not your fault, give them something, do something, give them a free seal coat, a hat. I don't know, wash their car, really anything, anything that's going to make them happy. And I think they see that, and they feel heard, and that's the biggest thing. I think feeling heard, understood, listened to. And when they see the lengths that you'll go to make them happy, I think it disarms them, and they're more reasonable to deal with. So that's kind of our philosophy right now. So I don't want to go to court ever. So the only time I ever end up at that point is if there's absolutely nothing I could do to change that situation, even if I redid it, or if they hire, obviously I don't believe that they could hire somebody else to do a better job than me, but so yeah, that's our philosophy.
On the topic of customers, what's been your approach for marketing? Do you believe in paid marketing? Do you believe in organic growth through referrals? What has seemed to work the best for you?
Well, this is my 35th year business with Erickson Asphalt. So you can imagine, first year I didn't even know really what a computer was, at that time. So, it was, you put an ad in the newspaper and the phone book, and that was it. And then word of mouth. I had paper. They didn't have the corrugated plastic yard signs like they do now. So I had paper printed ones that actually I would punch holes in the corner and run a piece of twine there and then string it up at the end of the driveways with my phone number on. So that's the only advertising I still use. Wow. from 1990. So it's evolved so much, and man, it's so much more complicated than it was when we first started it, because you put an ad in the newspaper, if you're bigger and in a better spot than your competitors, you got a call, right? You got that opportunity. The phone book, if you weren't in the gutter, they called it, or in the center of, most people don't even probably know what a phone book looks like. I've heard kids say, what is this? But there was I learned everything I could about that. And, when you're an entrepreneur, you're just, digesting all kinds of information, marketing, everything. So I love the marketing part. I really get excited about that. So, the psychology of it, everything. So, the phone book was big, and then I tracked everything. So I would put different offers, we had different tracking phone numbers. When people would call, I would ask them, which phone book did you use? Because there's like 6 different phone books that covered our area, that overlapped. And I got that down to a science. So I try to optimize my marketing. And so that part, the tracking hasn't changed. We still track every single call that comes in. Of course, now with like Google AdWords and things like that, you can get all kinds of metrics and tracking. And it's crazy what you can find out nowadays on the marketing. So, but it's still a shotgun approach. Like everything that's out there, we do the yard sign, we do the word of mouth, we ask for referrals, we do door hangers on a couple doors on each side, we do Google AdWords, we're doing, we hired you to do some videos, we've marketing at, the local sporting events. Now you can watch all the high school football games on. I
gotta go to one of those football games.
Yeah, have you? But well, you can actually go on YouTube and watch them. They're on YouTube replaying, and it's great. In fact, I got we got to do some work on it, because I noticed, like, when I got up to go get some, because I watched the high school football games, But when I got up to go make some popcorn or something, our ad was playing, but there's nothing in the background. So if I turn my head away, I don't know that it's Erickson Asphalt up doing the ad. So we got to put some sound with it. So when there was a Minuteman Press one, it's like a Minuteman Press. So I mean, they had their video and everything, but they also had talking going. And I'm like, oh, when's our ad going to play? Oh, it played when I was getting popcorn, but it was. So I don't know. You're always learning something, refining, and But God, there's just so many ways to advertise now. Podcasts. I mean, I listen to Dirt Talk, and that's how this guy is recruiting people. Like, because these people that are into the dirt business, they see him, they want to work for him. They listen to him. I don't know. It's so much more complicated now. And LinkedIn, another thing, if commercial stuff like to advertise, we've been using so many videos on LinkedIn to create some more advertising. Door to door, I still think door to door personal relationships, especially commercial, when you're doing commercial work, is building relationships is still, you just can't beat that, because if you know me, how many kids I have, and where I grew up and stuff like that, that's when you think about me, you're thinking about me in a much better light than somebody that you pulled up on your phone from an internet search, so I don't know. It's got so much more intricate, complicated, but yet it's so much more efficient. So everything can be so much more hyper focused to your customer. So if you pay attention to that, track that, measure it, and throw out the ones that aren't working, and scale the ones that are. So, we have a lead cost that we want to spend, and if it's working, we scale it until it maxes out. Then we find the next thing, scale that, max it out, and hopefully get everything going and scaled and maxed out. So still learning. There's still more to learn, and then it changes. As soon as you learn it changes. You never know. You never know it all, and by the time you do, it's on to the next thing.
Do you do anything small throughout the customer journey experience that you think is unique, that separates yourself?
The feedback that we hear from our customers is our communication process. So you call in, however you find us, you call in for an estimate. So right away you're getting an email back confirming the appointment. When one of our estimators or project managers coming out, you get a text reaffirming. Once you sign up for the job, you get some information on what to expect, not only from the project manager, will tell you in person, like, okay, here's what to expect. Then you'll get a follow-up email explaining that, because maybe there's other people involved, if it's a private, driveway, maybe, you have a spouse or partner or whatever. If it's a business, maybe there's other people involved, maintenance guys, maybe the owner wasn't even there, maybe the maintenance guy hired you. And so then we'll try to just give as much information and education on what to expect. Scheduling, we're just overboard on making sure we meet the requirements of your schedule, and just communication on it every step of the way. We make sure we've got process procedures written for that for every step of the way with each crew. They're going to communicate, what to do before they leave, what to expect, how to take care of their project, and then the follow-up too. Well, just following up to make sure that everything went good, and I don't know. That's kind of what I've heard. I just met with one of our new home construction customers, which we don't do too many of those, and we kind of stick to just a few that we like to work with because the margins are low. But they had started building up in Brainerd, and we wouldn't go that far, so they had to work with a different contractor, and they were just telling us, like, gosh, it's just, we wish you could come up there and work for us. It's just been a nightmare. The communication was what they pointed out. It's just, and another one of our customers that we work for was in a meeting with a friend of mine who has a business, and he said they were saying, well, if you could just perform like our asphalt guys do. And he's like, let me guess, it was Erickson Asphalt. He goes, how did you know? He goes, just, they have a reputation for just being that professional. So
Wow. You've mentioned some of the offhand comment about the stressful times, getting through that. One of your sons says he doesn't want that stress in his life as a business owner. How have you successfully navigated, carried it? What's the self-talk? How do you get through those hard times?
Gosh, how do I get through the hard times?
If you're talking to a 26-year-old right now, what would you tell him or her?
I mean, you gotta. I mean, I feel like hard times. You got to face them. Number one, with a level head, and just, I think just know that they're probably usually not as hard as you think at the time. Looking back, they won't ever look as hard as they probably were when you're staring at them. But I don't know. Trying to think of specific examples of hard times. I like to think that I'm always prepared for that. I'm out, hoping for the best, expecting the worst, or not expecting it, expecting the best, prepared for the worst. Like when the Great Recession happened, I lost 9 competitors. One thing that I did, which people thought I was crazy. I mean, I got yelled, I got swore at, but at that time we worked for mostly new home construction, and which that industry just about disappeared, just because of the Great Recession. But so we were doing like 400 new home construction driveways per year, and in 2007 and 2009 we did 10 new construction home driveways. That's how much the business dropped off on that. So in 2007, I seen that people were it was taking longer to collect our receivables. Like we were getting paid usually 30, 60 days. You'd get paid. Pretty soon it was like 90, 120. I'm like, and then, like I said earlier, I saw when my dad went out of business, it was all receivables from new construction homes. So he was owed what the equivalent of what today's money would be, like $2 million. And then the recession hit. They all like filed bankruptcy, went out of business. So he was out that. Well, that put him out of business. So what I did, I made a decision to put all my new construction home contractors on a net 10 days. So I think I worked for like 40 some new construction home builders at the time. All but 3 of them fired me the next week. And my brother, was my partner, is like, what in the hell did you just do? Like, I'm like, I just think this is what's going to happen. I don't want to be stuck. We were owed $300,000 in receivables at the time, which would have put us out of business if I hadn't collected. So I did that. They were hiring other people who, the ones they hired were my competitors, who ended up, they didn't get paid on those jobs because at that time it was like done. No one knew it, I mean, those houses weren't selling. They all went into foreclosure or whatever, went back to the banks, and for anybody who lived through that remembers that. But so then I had a friend of mine who owned a lumber company, and I said, it was John. I said, John, how do you collect on that? How should I collect on that? And he's like, don't do the liens. They're a waste of time. He says, your projects are within the small claims court guidelines, minimum. And so he said, take them all to small claims court, because then they can't sell any property as long as they have a judgment on them. So they can't. So if one house sells, they have to pay you on everything they owe you on all the other properties that are connected to the name search when they do a title search. So I spent one whole winter with my office manager, Missy, at the time, taking them to small claims court. Because you don't lose. I mean, we had some argue, well, our agreement was to pay upon closing. Well, the judge would be like, well, that was 2 years ago, or that they put it in, like, and you haven't sold it yet. At some point, you got to pay your bills. So the judge awarded and I collected all but $30,000 of that. And between that and switching to a more focus on maintenance than new install, that was another big shift we made at that time. But then when we came out of it, about 2011 or 12, it started to really come back. I always tell people it was like the movie Forrest Gump, when he gets caught in the storm and he comes back and all the other shrimp boats are destroyed. I'm like, I felt like Forrest Gump out there. Like I was the only paving company in the area left. So it was good. So ever since then, it's just been really good times. We got a lot of competitors now. It's been boom. Like some of my competitors are at the age they didn't go through the recession. They were maybe in high school or younger or something. So I don't know. I feel like I'm weaving around
No,
the
I
questions.
love it. That's great.
But
I gotta change this battery here.
okay.
This is less of a timely question, or timeless question, I should say. But what is your current read on the outlook of this is 2024, just after the election? Trump is now president-elect. What's your outlook for the next, say, 4 or 5, 10 years? I don't know.
I guess I haven't thought about 10 years. I mean, I feel like, gosh, I haven't been able to sleep much since the election. I'm just so excited about what the positive things that could come out of this. So this is what, in fact, I just talked about it this morning. I've been talking about it for a couple of days. I think the next year we're on a downward trend. We ramped up for a 30% growth this year. We had a 30% last year. We ramped up for a 30. We'll end up with a 5% growth. So to me, that's, I mean, I don't want to say a fail, but because we're, up 5%, a lot of companies would be happy to have that growth every year. But we're used to double digit. We're used to 10% or more every year. So that's what we've always strived for, I think. But 5%, it's growth. To me, that's a recession, because I feel like some of my competitors actually contracted and went down in business. So I feel like we're in for that for another year or so. I feel like it's hard to turn a big ship, this economy. And so I feel like we got 1 year of that kind of downward trend. And then I think it's just going to boom. I think we're in for another boom, probably 2026. We plan on growing regardless, with implementing different strategies through taking over some different market share that we think is available, just because of some of our competitors have been bought up by private equity groups, and to me they're just pirates that destroy companies and employees' lives. I've had a lot of them try to buy our company, and I just don't want to do that to my employees. So, but so there's some opportunities in our market share, but I think the economy as a whole, I think it's gonna take a little while before that pendulum swings back the other way.
What would you advise to a business owner, newer guy that would want to position themselves to take advantage of a boom? What are some of the things that we can prepare, whether it's myself, a tree care guy, whoever? Just what have you learned? How are you going to position yourself to actually be ready for the boom?
I mean, planning, I think, I'm a big believer in, you don't plan to fail, you fail to plan. Yeah, you should always plan for growth. If you think it's going to be a down year, then you got to figure out, well, where can we grow? There's always some area that you can grow. There's always some different venue you haven't thought about. You got to come up with that. You got to think, for us, we expanded into sweeping. We started out just Erickson asphalt services. We added concrete, we have so much more potential in that. We just started advertising it 2 years ago. We started doing it 5 years ago just because our customers were asking for it. But there's always, you got to look at what can you expand your business that's similar. I mean, you don't want to start a whole new business, because that can create a whole nother set of problems. But I think there's always like things that you could add on to whatever business that you're in. But that's what I don't know. I just positive thinking that there's opportunity mindset. I mean, there's always opportunity. I don't care how bad it is. There's always opportunity.
What are you most proud of throughout this, reflecting back, or anything come to mind?
Proud of? I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. That's a tough question. That's a good question. I mean, I think proud of, I guess oh, yeah, I know what it is. The most proud of the way I've conducted myself. That's what I'm probably the most proud of. The more and more people I meet, the more I realize how well I've conducted myself compared to a lot of people out there. So, especially, sometimes you get a picture, people will paint a picture for you of who they are, and you kind of find out after a while, oh, that's not really who you are. And I feel like I am the picture that I paint of myself. So I guess that's what I'm the most proud of.
Staying true to your core values.
Yeah. Yeah. It's, we've been successful, and I think that, like money and success is just kind of a measure of how you play the game, how well you conduct yourself. And most business owners at a certain point, once your needs are met, you're not doing it for the money. You're doing it because you just love business. You love the game. You just love the challenge. You love the people that you get to meet. Just, sitting here doing stuff like this. I mean, having meetings with my customers. It's just, we had I had a 2-hour meeting yesterday. We talked about business for maybe 10 minutes. The rest is just fun, so.
When you think about being a visionary and looking to the future and staying on track, how do you think about goal setting or just moving into the future that you see in your mind? I don't necessarily want to hear about traction and setting rocks and that sort of thing. I guess a little bit more higher level this is more of a selfish question. I want to move towards a future that I want to see myself in, say 5 or 10 years. Sometimes it's really hard to get clear on what I actually want. And I'm curious how you've been able to just see what you want, go after it, and not get distracted. I have a bad case of shiny object syndrome, and I'll get distracted. And curious, yeah, I'll just leave it at that.
Squirrel. shiny syndrome of how God, tell me that ask me that question again.
How do you get clear on your vision of what you want? How do you think about goal setting?
Okay. Goal setting is just, to me, it's just, I do it for my personal life too, set a goal, what I want to do. I don't know. It's just been part of me. I've just, the people who, I feel like the people who function, that I've seen that function the best in their life are people who set goals, and I've set goals and never, I wouldn't say never achieved them, but I've just decided at one point, like, oh, why did I do that? I don't want that goal. I think that's fine too, but I think when you set goals, you achieve them. I think, and I've told my kids, is that when you set a goal, it's like saying a prayer and your prayers are answered. And you rarely do you not hit your goals. It's pretty rare when you don't hit your goals. The problem most people have is they don't set the goals high enough. And that's probably been my biggest problem, And I save my personal goals I got, and I just write them on paper or whatever, but I write the year and I can look back and I'm like, so I have 1 year, 5, 10 year, I write down every year, and you look back and it's like, man, I've hit every 10-year goal within 5 years. It's like, I got to start setting goals a little bit bigger. And I think it's more fun striving for the goal than hitting the goal. Almost like the hitting the goal is almost a little letdown. It's like, oh crap, now what's the next? I don't know. I think for me, it's just, I think some of it you're just kind of born with, it's just, you're born with that type of personality, I don't know if it's for everybody, but that's just for me, I can just say that I was just born with that personality type, and other people are born with different personality. It doesn't make me better than them because I'm good at business. Doesn't make somebody else who's good at, I'm always jealous of people that can sing and play guitar. So I always use that reference, but you're just born with that. It doesn't make me lesser of a person because I can't play guitar, but it doesn't make, I don't know. I think you got to just stick with how you're built, or you're bent, I guess is what I've heard, stick with your bent.
What didn't I ask that would have been a good question to help the listener?
I don't know. I was just thinking about this when you were changing that dead battery or something. But have you ever heard the saying, the harder you work, the luckier you get. And I've been called lucky by a lot of people, which I always say luck is the word best used to describe the success of someone you don't like. Because I feel like I'm not lucky. I just put myself out there. I work hard and I prepare for opportunity. And I was thinking back to when you asked me about the challenges of business, and one big turning point was in the year 2000. My brother and I weren't getting along. My partner, my older brother and I at the time, we weren't really getting along. Things weren't going that good. We were 50-50 owners, but we didn't have a business structure. And so it's like we were both the boss, which is a really bad idea. For anybody that might be listening that has a partner, like one of you has to be a boss. That's just, especially for your employees. But anyhow, we were sitting there actually having a conversation about whether we shut the business down and go our separate ways or not. And this guy in a suit walks in the door, and we're sitting back in the shop, and it's pretty somber, and we're just sitting there, and this guy comes in, and he's from like New Jersey with this New Jersey attitude. And he was actually selling a business consulting program, and like he couldn't have walked in at a more precise time, at just the right moment with the right message. And we ended up hiring his firm. They spent 5 months in our office with a team of 6 people, totally restructured our business, gave us, every job descriptions. They interviewed our employees. It was just an awesome experience. Cost us a lot of money, but we were either going to shut it down or keep going. So they said, give us total control. We're like, yeah, whatever. Cause we don't know what we're doing. We're at this point of, this precipice really. So yeah, that was things like that happen when you're in business just amaze me. Where our shop is right now, I had bought this shop, and it was an old shop. It was kind of a crappy building, but it was a building, right? Before that we were working out of fixing trucks in my yard under a tarp or something, And I let a friend of mine use the shop too. He was going out west snowmobiling, and he needed to change jets for the altitude. So he drained the gas out. We had a pop machine in there that wasn't up to code. When it kicked on, it had a spark for the compressor. Well, there was fumes in there, ignited the fumes, blew up our building, right? Burnt our rollers, our computers, everything, all of our business records. And I was sick. I mean, I just sick about it. I laid on the couch for almost 2 weeks, just depressed. And thankfully, my brother just said, well, we're going to just rebuild. And he just, that's when the good part about having partners, when you're down, then maybe they're up, So, that was another, but, we got through that, got a new building. And the next year, that was during, it was Christmas Eve when that happened. But by the next spring, we had a new building built. We worked through the winter on it, and there was this bunch of land behind us that was just like shrubs and trees, whatever. And I went outside for a walk in the spring and was just standing out there, and actually walked back out in the trees to relieve myself. And and all of a sudden, this truck comes driving towards me through the brush, this like 4-wheel drive truck. And I'm like, oh crap. And this guy in the passenger seat pulls up, Hey. And I'm like, can I help you? And he goes, well, this is my land, and this is my realtor, and I'm tired of paying taxes on this. And I'm like, okay. Yeah. He's like, well, this is your building. You should buy all this land, And we were just stuffed into like this little tiny lot. Like we could barely fit in. We could barely get our trucks in our shop without driving on this other guy's land. And he goes, you should buy it. And I go, that'd be great, but we just had a fire, built this. I go, I have no money at all. I couldn't afford to buy. And he goes, well, I finance it. How about $50,000? It was 15 acres of commercial land. I'm like, that's a great price, but I can't afford it. He goes, well, how about 30,000? I'm like, that's even better. I can't afford it. He goes, you got $500? And I go, no, I don't have $500, but I'll find it. Why? What are you thinking? He's like, well, I'll sell it to you contract for deed, 30,000. You come up with $500. I'll finance it for you.
Wow.
So I borrowed the $500 from somebody.
Yeah, you can find $500.
Yeah. Well, then it turns out that all this shrub was just overgrown. It had already been developed. It had already been lotted off into lots. I didn't know this. It had a road built in it that the trees were going through, just like 6-foot tall shrubs. So once we started digging into it with the county, it was all plotted off to sell as commercial lots, and things were starting to boom in our area, So long story shortened up, within 6 months, we paved the road in there, listed some of the lots for sale, and had them paid off within 6 months, and had made over $100,000 profit, and still had half the lots left.
Wow.
I mean, just things like that, just being prepared, or, to take advantage of that, mentally, and not necessarily financially, but just being prepared to accept whatever opportunities come your way, and not feel like you 100% can't do it. I think that's another thing. Yeah, you just never know in business. You never know who's going to walk through your door next and what's going to happen. I think to me, that's like one of the most exciting things, is like every day something could happen that day that you'd never dreamt of having happen. So I don't know. That's what keeps me.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'll ever be able to retire because of that one thing. It's like, what's going to happen next? So.
Yeah, I love that. Well, Dan, thanks for doing this. This has been just a pleasure. My last question is kind of similar to that one, but it's just, what's something you've learned along the way, whether it's a word of wisdom, a piece of advice, an ask of the listener, an action that they should go take? What do you want to leave that listener with?
An action? I don't know. Never stop learning. Never stop learning. I think that's very important. I mean, when you stop learning, you're done. As soon as you think you know it all, you're done. So I don't know. I feel like I don't know anything, and I think that's an asset. Stay humble and never stop learning.
Nice. Dan Erickson, thank you very much.
Thanks for having me.